Hey friends, welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. I didn't do a January TBR like I intended because my husband ended up in the hospital. If you've been watching my vlogs recently, you will have seen all of that. So I didn't have a TBR video. I did have a written out TBR in my book journal. But like I said, because he was in the hospital, I didn't do the TBR video. But I did want to do a wrap-up to discuss all the books that I read in January. So let's jump right in. So I do have my book journal where I have been tracking my reading here. So if you see me looking down, that is why I'm referencing that. So the first book that I finished in January was actually an ARC. I received this through NetGalley, which I'm very grateful for. I don't have, these are all ebooks, either ebooks or audiobooks, so I don't physically have them, but I'm going to put the covers up here. So like I said, this first book was thanks to NetGalley. This is The Fury by Alex Michaelides, I think is how you say his last name, Michaelides, I'm not sure, but he is the author who wrote The Silent Patient and The Maidens, both of which I have back here on my shelves. And I think The Silent Patient I bought myself, but I believe The Maidens I also got as an ARC from the publisher. So I'm very appreciative of that. The Silent Patient is one of the best books I think I've ever read. I liked The Maidens, not quite as much. And then The Fury, I would say, was good. I enjoyed it, but I would say it probably ranked third out of those three books that I've read by this author. So this book is a murder mystery, whodunit, kind of Clue-like type book, but it is very much, like I said, a murder mystery. The book starts out and you find out that someone in this friend group, I think there's like 6 or 7 people within this friend group, or this group of people who has been murdered. You don't immediately know who the actual victim is or who the murderer is. You find that out as you go through the book. So one thing that I really liked about this was that it's set on, or the majority of it is set on a private island. So I really like books that are set in those kind of like captive environments where it's just these people on this like location and they can't really leave. And there's no like other people, you know, coming in and out. They're set in this one place and it's just this group of people. And I really liked that. So it's set in a private island in Greece where a famous actress has brought her family / friend group. She has brought with her husband, her son, and 2 of her friends who are fellow actors. They are actors of stage. She is a film actress, or was a famous film actress. And like I said, she also brought her son and her husband, and then also on the island is her housekeeper / assistant, who travels around with her, and also the caretaker of the island. So that is everybody that is on the island. And like I said, the whole way through, you never really know. One, you don't know who, for part of the book, you don't know who the like narrator is. You know that it's one of the people on the island, but you don't know which one of them. And then, like I said, you don't originally know who the victim was, or obviously who the killer is. I enjoyed, like I said, the isolated setting. The end result, there were a few twists towards the end. There were a couple that I kind of somewhat saw coming. The big like reveal, or one of the twists, I was never really like blown away or completely surprised. The Silent Patient has like one of the biggest like reveals I think I've ever read in a book that I just absolutely did not see coming. This one, it was kind of the same, but I don't know if it was more me. I think it was more me than the actual book, because this is the 3rd book I've read by this author, and I know that he has big twists at the end of his book that I was kind of expecting it, and I just went in suspicious of everyone. And another thing that I did enjoy is that all of these people are like unreliable. They're all kind of morally gray. No one, there's no one who is like above murder, who you really think could not be the murderer. So again, it is kind of like Clue, where you're suspicious of everyone and trying to figure out who did what where. And in the end, actually I'm not gonna say that because I don't want to give it away. I liked this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because, like I said, none of the twists really like completely took me by surprise or blew me away. Because all the characters were kind of suspicious and unreliable, I just went in expecting everyone. So once I found out what had happened, I wasn't really that blown away. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, like I said, and that was the first book that I finished in January. Okay, so the next book I read was Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. I've read, I don't even know, several books by Tessa Bailey now, and I've enjoyed all of them. I would say this is probably my least favorite of her books. I ended up giving it 3 stars. This is supposed to be a like Christmassy themed book, but there isn't really much Christmas in this book other than the fact that the like culmination of the book happens on Christmas Eve. But other than that, it's not really that Christmassy. There's no like real like Christmas activities. There's no like there's a snowball fight in New York City, but it doesn't have the like Christmassy vibes that you would expect from a book called like Wreck the Halls, you know, play on Christmassy type, you know, title, and that again is set during like December, obviously. There were parts of this book that were kind of corny. For example, the main characters, their names are Beat and Melody, music related, and both their moms happen to be these like ex-band members, like rock and roll stars, and their names are Beat and Melody. I liked this. Like I said, it was probably my least favorite of her books. It wasn't like amazing, but it was good. It was funny. I did like the romance. I love Beat as a character. He's very sweet and really stood up for Melody and was a good friend to her, and I enjoyed the romance between them. What really kind of killed this book for me was that there is a blackmail element to it. I don't want to go into like specifics, but there is a blackmail within the book, and I just didn't like that. It made me uncomfortable. And the person who's blackmailing the other person, that part just made me even more uncomfortable. So that part kind of ruined the book for me, honestly. Had that been left out, I think, you know, I don't love the whole like miscommunication trope or, you know, theme that always happens at the end of a contemporary romance, but I would have preferred that. I think there could have been other ways that it could have been done, and not have had to have this whole blackmail thing. So the whole thing is that these 2 kids, their mothers are ex-bandmates, like I said, and the band fell apart or broke up, you know, years ago, and I think when either before the kids were born or like right after they were born. So they didn't actually meet until they were like 16 for the first time, and then they come together years later. And I think maybe part of the miscommunication could have been more like tension, more hard feelings between the kids, or maybe the kids have like kind of taken on their parents' hard feelings towards each other. And I think this would have been better suited had it been more of a like enemies to lovers, because of like automatically these 2 meet when they're 16 and they're automatically like best friends and have this connection and are super nice to each other and like don't allow their moms like resentment towards each other to affect them, which I like that, you know, they're not holding grudges just because their moms are. But at the same time, I do think an enemies to lovers type of thing would have been better maybe than the whole blackmail thing. I would have preferred that over the blackmail thing. I just think that would have worked better, and I wouldn't have felt as uncomfortable, like I said. There were a couple of smut scenes in this towards not the end of the book, but maybe like 50-60% of the way through, which is pretty tame for Tessa Bailey. I read a Tessa Bailey book, I think it was like Rules of Engagement? I don't remember. One of her books where there was sex happening on like page like 4 of the book. So comparatively for this book to not have smut until like either halfway through or maybe like just about halfway through is pretty tame for her. And there was only maybe 2 or 3 smut scenes in this. And by no means do I need to have smut on every single, you know, page or every other chapter or whatever, but for what Tessa Bailey typically writes, this was pretty tame. So yeah, those are basically my feelings. I think it could have been done better. I liked the premise. I don't think it needed to be set with this kind of sort of referenced like Christmas theme because it didn't really come through. This could have been placed at any time during the year and it would have been the same book. So yeah, overall I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars, and like I said, I would say this is probably my least favorite of Tessa Bailey's books, but it was good. Okay, so the third book I finished is called A Ship of Bones and Teeth by Karina Hale. This is I think it's Hale or Haley. I think it's Hale. This is a book that I saw recommended over and over and over again on TikTok, and people were saying that they loved this book and that they were going to get a tattoo of this book, a lot of like a quote or whatever, you know, a tattoo themed after this book. And the cover for this book is beautiful. And so this is a like combination of The Little Mermaid and Pirates of the Caribbean, which is what immediately drew me in. I love, 1, I love retellings, 2, I love The Little Mermaid, and 3, I love Pirates of the Caribbean. So I loved the idea of that. I also love books set like in the ocean. I love books with pirates. So this had like everything that I wanted. This book, theme-wise, was like perfect for me. Where it fell flat, I ended up giving it 3 stars, by the way. Where it fell flat for me was the writing. The writing wasn't great. I think the first like 20 to 30% of the book was pretty good. And then once the pirates came in, I felt like everything just kind of started to fall apart. Like the dialogue just didn't match up. I felt like these pirates were saying things that pirates wouldn't say. And it just, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy that half of the book. The thing that I was most excited about was the pirates. And once the pirates came in, I didn't like it as much. There was a good amount of smut in this, which was good. There was like on page 6 scenes, there was a good amount of smut in this, which was good. Those scenes were good. I think mainly it was the dialogue that I ended up not enjoying. This book does have a touch on like domestic violence. The main character is being abused by her husband, which is another thing, which was another part of it that I really liked, was this like idea of the Little Mermaid. In this book, she is a siren, but it's basically the same premise. She sees the prince up on the shore, you know, thinks she's in love with him. You know, she's a young 16-year-old girl who is kind of pushed to the wayside. She's the youngest daughter. Her father kind of ignores her for her sisters. And she sees this man on the shore and wants to become human. She goes to a sea witch. She gets turned into a human. You know, kind of the same typical premise of The Little Mermaid. Where this changes is that then all of a sudden it's like 10 years later or something. And what's her name? Marion, I think is her name. She ends up, it turns out that Prince Eric is abusive. He is physically abusive with her, so it's an issue of like domestic violence. And I think that's interesting to flip it like on its head that way. And I really enjoyed that part of it, but like I said, it kind of fell off for me once the pirates came in, which sucks because that was the part that I was most excited about. So overall, I thought this was good. I think the theming and the overall like plot was better than the execution of it. I think it fell flat once it came to the writing and the actual execution of it. But I really loved the idea of it, and so yeah, I gave it 3 stars. So the next book I read was also an ARC that I received from NetGalley. This is The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. This came out on January 3rd, I believe. Oh, and I forgot to say that The Fury came out, I think, on January 16th. But The Heiress came out on January 3rd, I think it was, by Rachel Hawkins. This is the first book I read by this author, and I would definitely be reading more of her books. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. This gave me major like Evelyn Hugo vibes, which I loved. It was the same kind of thing where a woman is going from husband to husband to husband to husband, and she's someone of like notoriety and someone people know, like a famous person, and nobody really knows what's happening and why she's like going through these husbands so quickly. And in this case, I don't remember if this was the case in Evelyn Hugo or not, but in this case, the husbands keep dying, and so people suspect that she's killing the husbands, and so you're not really sure exactly what's going on. This was a lot like The Fury in that you were never really sure where it was going to go the whole time and who you could really trust. Again, it was kind of isolation where it's the main couple in the book go to a house set like in the woods where this family, very rich family lives, and that is where the heiress comes from. And so they're kind of isolated in their own little bubble within this house. And all the people within this house are pretty unreliable and suspicious and not very good people. So you don't really know who to trust and who to believe and what the truth is. This one did have a little bit more of a twist that I didn't see coming than The Fury, like I said. This one actually had a couple of, like, you could definitely tell that there were some red herrings and, like, things meant to, like, shift your attention and, like, oh, is it this, or you know, draw you away from the truth. I think that worked well. In the end, there were a couple of reveals that I didn't see coming, so I enjoyed that part of it. And yeah, I ended up really liking it. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it 5 stars because there just wasn't really anything to push it into 5-star territory. For me, a 5-star book is a book that, one, either elicits like extreme emotion. If a book makes me like sob, if it makes me extremely angry, if it makes me very sad or very happy, like elicits some kind of strong emotion, or if it like completely blows me away with like a plot twist that I did not see coming, or if it's something completely different that I've never seen before, something unique, something like that, then that can push it up into a 5-star for me. This was good. I really enjoyed it, but there wasn't anything to push it up into the 5-star territory. So yeah, that is the 5th or 4th book that I read. So the 5th book that I read is The Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I have heard about this book everywhere. It's been all over TikTok, all over Bookstagram. People have been raving about this book. It actually won this year for Young Adult Fantasy for the Goodreads Choice Awards. And like I said, I've been hearing about this book all over the place. I recently joined Fable, which is an online community where you can have online book clubs. Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte, who I will link down below, recommended Fable, and so I decided to check it out. And I ended up starting a book club with my, like, now I think we're up to like 4 of my coworkers and a couple of our friends. So we're up to like 6 or 7 people now, maybe even 8 people now, in a book club on Fable. And the first book we chose to read was Divine Rivals, and we all really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the experience of getting to use Fable during it. You're able to schedule out the reading however you want and whatever like chunks and breakdown you want, and then you can also comment within your group for each specific chapter, which I really liked. So it worked out well that some of us were ahead of each other, some of us were a little bit behind, some of us have already finished it while a couple of us are still finishing it. But it allows, because you can comment on every chapter, someone who's ahead can go and comment on the chapters ahead. And I really liked that part, because then I can see that, oh, there's comments coming up. Oh, somebody had thoughts about something that's going to happen. And then you can also choose, like, for example, my best friend Ray, she's someone who doesn't mind, like, spoilers, and she'll often, you know, read reviews ahead of time. She'll look up spoilers, she'll read synopsises, whereas I'm the opposite. I want to go into a book blind. I don't want to know anything. I never read synopsis. If the book, I'm usually, like, go based off the cover or based on somebody else's description or somebody's recommendation. So this worked out great for both people on the spectrum. Someone like Ray, who likes to know what's going on and wants to have an idea of what's going to happen. If she wants to go ahead and read people's comments from, you know, chapter 20 when she's still on chapter 10, she can do that. Whereas me, if I don't want to know anything, I don't have to do that. So I like that it gives you the freedom to do both. But it still gave me kind of the excitement knowing that there was comments that I was going to get to read and people's opinions that I was going to get to read when I got to chapter, 15, made me more motivated to read quicker and to read more so that I could get to chapter 15 to see what somebody had to say about it. So that actually ended up motivating me to read more. But about the book itself, this is about 2 journalists who live in this town, and they are rivals within their like newspaper where they work. There is like magical realism in this, magical elements. I don't want to give too much away, but the last 2 to 3 chapters of this book were crazy. I was freaking out. I was reading it at midnight and was freaking out, trying not to wake up my husband. I really liked this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Again, there wasn't anything to push it into 5-star territory, but it was definitely close. I really ended up liking it. There are gods that are at war and the people are kind of stuck in the middle. And there's a first half of the book that's set in a city, and it's just normal contemporary setup. These 2 rival journalists are kind of going back and forth with each other, and then there's the element the magical realism element, and then the second half of the book they become war correspondents, and it's more of an adventure. It becomes a little bit more fast paced, and there's more things happening. And so I did like the second half of the book more. The war correspondent part was very interesting, and I liked that. But again, there wasn't anything that made it like a 5-star. But I am very excited to get into the next book, which I forget what the next book is called. Something Vows, I think. Ruthless Vows, I think. Something Vows. So we're waiting for the last person to finish the book, and then we're going to start on the second one. So I'm very excited about that. So be on the lookout for that, and hopefully coming in February. Hey guys, welcome back. As you can see, I have had another wardrobe change. That is 3 in this one video, because this video has spanned like a week now. I meant to sit down and film all these at once, but I ended up filming them in sections. I kept getting interrupted and had to do stuff for work. So today is January 31st. It is the last day of the month. This is the official end of this wrap-up. The 6th book that I read was The Templar Legacy by Steve Berry. This is a Knights Templar, like Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code, National Treasure, like the movie type of book. And I really enjoyed it. I'm a huge like history nerd. I love reading about these types of things, like the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, that kind of thing. Anything having to do with like conspiracy theories, stuff like that. And a lot of these books have a lot of like religious themes, and again like conspiracy theories when it comes to religion and Catholicism and Christ and all the things, which are all things that I am interested in. So I really liked this. Again, it was very Dan Brown-esque. It reminded me a lot of the Da Vinci Code. A lot of it took place in France, which I really liked. They kind of moved around through France and I forget where else in Europe, but they kind of bounced around. And I realized that this series is actually like 18 books long, so I don't know if I'm going to read the entire series, at least not right away. But I ended up really liking this. Like I said, I'm a history buff, so that part of it really appealed to me. Like I said, the locations appealed to me. I really liked the main character, Cotton Malone, who's the man who the entire series centers around. Yeah, I ended up liking it. I gave it 3 stars. There wasn't really anything that bumped it up into 4 stars for me. There were a couple of surprises, things that I didn't see coming. But for the most part, it was basically just the history that I really liked about it. More so than like the actual like plot or anything. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. So that is it. And the last book that I read in January was Kingdom of Ash, the 7th and final book. 7th, I think? 7th or 8th. The final book in the Throne of Glass series. I had put this one off for so long because I didn't want the series to be over. I loved this whole series. I don't know which one I like more, this one or Avatar, but the last like 20% of this book, I like sobbed my way through the whole book, basically through that whole section of the book. I ended up really loving this. I can't give away too much of the plot because it is so far along into the story, but I just love the way everything kind of culminated together, the way all of the different like threads that Sarah J. Maas had weaved came together, and all the different pairings off, and there was some loss, some heartache, which I loved and hated. I hate losing characters, but I also love when a book makes me feel something, and when I grow to love characters so much that when we lose them, it hurts. I love that. And yeah, this was a really good culmination of all of the books. Perfect way for everything to come together. And yeah, that is gonna be it for this wrap up. I ended up reading 7 books this month, which is pretty good. Not as good as I typically read, but I will take it for the beginning of the month, especially the month we had. So that's gonna be it for this wrap up. I will see you guys in my February TBR video.